Hello and welcome to another edition of Santos on Sports, along with my partner in crime, Mr. Chris Santos. I am Paul Santos. This is going to be a lot of fun today because once again, when it comes to New England sports, there is plenty to talk about. Well, let's start out by thanking our sponsors. How about Scotty's Pub, located at 202 Pleasant Street in the great city of Fall River? Citywide glass with 3 locations to serve you in Dartmouth, Fall River, and Taunton. Lakeville Athletic Club at 325 Bedford Street in the great town of Lakeville, Massachusetts, and a good friend, person who I saw today, as a matter of fact. He refers to me as the Golden Voice, which I appreciate. Attorney John Seed, former quarterback, a great player for New Bedford. Father, of course, very well known in the community, still coaching baseball. Well, John Seed's an attorney at law, 156 8th Street in New Bedford, and we appreciate his support. You can go to his website at johnseedlaw.com. Chris, it's getting ugly with the Patriots. What are we going to do with the Patriots?
That is a great question. And I thought of this question, Paul, and the reason I did because I talked to a lot of people and they're thinking now already the future, what's up for next year. Already thinking about, nothing with this year, the tanking purposes, all kinds of things going on. So the question I think of, and please call us at 774-762-6234. Where should the Pats go from here with their quarterback situation? Is this now, okay, Zappy's 2-0. Let's start Zappy every game from now on, see what he does, and then we'll determine for next year. Do we go to free agency next year? Do we make a trade next year? Or do we go into the draft? And if you go into the draft, Paul, you're not guaranteed that following year is going to be a great year. Is it a 2-3 year process? So a lot going on with the Patriots right now, especially with this last week loss to the Giants. And a lot of people are thinking, boy, where should we go from here? So the question to our viewers is just that. Where should the Patriots get their next quarterback from? Do we stick with Mac Jones and say, no, it's not him? Do we do Zappy, draft, trade, free agency? Where do we go from here? Call in, let us know what you think. 774-762-6234. Paul, we'll start with you. What would you like to see the Patriots do next?
Well, I can see one of our viewers has commented already. Scott Wayne Roy Sr. says, flat out, trade that bum. So that's what he thinks. But I got to tell you, I got a little bit of a different take on this because I've been kind of thinking about this a little bit. And to go back into the draft, you're basically ripping it up and starting it over.
Yes.
Which means you're now going to go to a 3-4 year rehab project. I mean, to go into the draft, get a quarterback, get him in there, surround him with talent, let him learn how to be an NFL quarterback. I mean, that's like going all the way back to zero. You know what I'm saying? And it's a crapshoot. I mean, I think Mahomes got picked like 12th. I mean, we start looking at the great quarterbacks around. Only Peyton Manning I can think of was a Hall of Famer that was picked first overall. I mean, the quarterbacks all over the place. Look at Purdy. It was at the end of the draft. Brady at the end of the draft. I mean, there's good quarterbacks all over the place. You just can't put your finger on it when it comes to picking somebody like that. And it's amazing, too, because the scouts, I mean, this is their full-time job. They really study this stuff, and it's just not an exact science. That's been proven over and over again. So I'm thinking to myself, man, one more year with Mac Jones. I know. Don't throw anything at the laptop. Don't throw anything at the laptop. But here's the frustrating part, right? He is mediocre. I'm going to call him Mediocre Mac.
That's fine.
But Mediocre Mac is on a god-awful team with a coaching that's really suspect and decisions on personnel that, even though you got the greatest quarterback of all time, has been horrendous. Now think about this. Chris and I were joking about this a little bit. Remember, Chris, when I said they're 2-9,
yes,
and I said to you, they could easily be 6-5 with just a few slight adjustments. You're like, wait a minute, really? Just a few? Well, think about it for a second, okay? Devontae Parker, bum. Juju Smith-Schuster, bum. Tyquan Thornton, bum. New field goal kicker that he got in the 4th round, Chad Ryland, bum. Okay, now wait a minute. Now, suppose the Patriots at the beginning of the year re-signed Jacoby Myers, right? Him and Mac Jones, for whatever reason, they had the same cerebral approach. They were on the same page. So even though Jacoby Myers isn't going to get in the Hall of Fame, that was the guy that he could go to on 3rd down. So Jacoby Myers, you sign him. You go out and get a DeAndre Hopkins. You keep Nick Folk, who hasn't missed a 50-yard field goal all year, okay? Now let's go back. You pointed this out. Let's go back and look at some of the games. The Philadelphia Eagles, perhaps the best team in the league. The Patriots lost 25-20. They lost to Miami, a game that you and I went to with the families and stuff like that, 24-17, one touchdown. Okay, yeah, they got blown out a couple of times, but then lost to Las Vegas, 21-17, lost to Washington, 20-17, and these last 2 weeks, 10-6 and 10-7. You mean to tell me that Nick Folk couldn't you want one of your game there? So right now they've won 2, and I'm saying they could have won 6. Okay, Nick Folk can win you at least one game. You have an offensive line, which I didn't mention in that list of things, which is god awful. If you paid and got some good offensive linemen, there were some Pro Bowlers out there. Didn't want to pay that either. Okay, you put that in there. You signed Myers, you signed DeAndre Hopkins, you tidy up a couple of other things. I think that adjustment could get you up to the 500 mark, and they'd be fighting for a playoff spot right now. So even though Mac Jones is mediocre, I mean, surrounded by this disaster, has really made him go down the rabbit hole. And I just think, as much as I'm not a big Mac Jones fan, I was yelling for Zappy, last year when he came in that Bears game. I really think they weren't fair to him. I really think they messed him up.
Do you think Zappy should get the starts from now on?
Well,
and am I right to say he's 2-0 as a starter with New England? Is that right?
Yeah, well, I don't know if Decon is out there, but I always like to bring up that game against the Detroit Lions last year where Zappy went out there and racked up 35 points. Now, I know it's a whole different Lions team than it is now, so I suppose that's not a very persuasive argument. But, here's the thing too, right? Zappy, right? Zappy was good when Patricia was the offensive coordinator. For some reason, with O'Brien in there, O'Brien doesn't like Zappy. Zappy doesn't seem to click with O'Brien. But last year, right, when Zappy went in there, I think I remember Patricia kind of leaking out that he likes Zappy better than Mac Jones. So for whatever reason, now you've got, Zappy clicking with Patricia and those guys, but not so much with Mac Jones. So I don't know. I think you've got to start Zappy this time. I think you really do. I don't see how you can go back to Jones. You got to give Jones a little time off, I think.
Yeah, you have 2 young kids. You got, both. There's no veterans here. This year we've seen C.J. Stroud for Houston be the quarterback picked early for Houston to take over. Bryce Young has not been exceptionally well for Carolina. So there is something in the draft, Paul, to say, okay, we might get somebody that can bring us to 500 like what Stroud is doing with Houston. But I agree with you that it's a 2-3 year project to sit back and say, well, can I go playoffs? Can I go Super Bowl? I don't know if I can get that out of a draft pick right away, especially for next year. Now, Brock Purdy, an opportunity got into a system where this quarterback got hurt. He came in, had a great game. They gave him another start, and he's just carried the load ever since. Diamond in the rough, once in a lifetime shot? Absolutely. Can it happen? It sure can. But can you pick that kind of player for your team? That's tough to say. So it's really difficult. Then you look at free agencies. Kirk Cousins, Baker Mayfield. There's some guys out there that you say, do I really want to do this? Am I going to pay the money for these guys? Are they too old? A lot of things can happen, but, it's very difficult to say. And the management will really have to think about this one at the end of the season, especially if they start Zappy the rest of the way and he does not perform as well as Mac Jones.
All right, the question of the day, thought up by our own Chris Santos. Where should the Patriots go to get a new quarterback? Draft, trade, free agency? Do we give Mac Jones one more year? Which I know is probably a controversial point of view. Let's see what Ben in Dartmouth thinks. Hello, Ben. You're on Santos on Sports.
Welcome back. I got to say, though, I mean, I'm 50-50 on going either picking up a quarterback in free agency or drafting a quarterback. I mean, free agent quarterbacks, we got Kirk Cousins, which possibly he's old kind of, but and so is Ryan Tannehill. But you could go for a new guy who knows the system really well, like a guy who's a power quarterback who's a leader for his team. Drake May, that's a guy from North Carolina you'd be looking forward to in the draft. I'd say pick somebody in the second round, like Bo Nix, a second round talent, along with JJ McCarty from Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
However, I mean, Mac Jones, this was his make it or break it year. But so far, he's just breaking it for his own sake.
But is it his fault, though? In other words, if you surrounded him with some of the people I said, like Jacoby Myers, even, who's not a Hall of Famer, but click with Mac Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, maybe you keep the field goal kicker, maybe you build up the offensive line, give him a little bit more protection. I mean, I think he could have done better. I mean, he's mediocre Mac. He doesn't put a lot of mustard on the ball, but I have to tell you, I think if he was surrounded by the talent, I think he would be manageable enough to at least get you pretty close to the playoffs.
I mean, the kicker at the same time, special teams is a big off too, because their special teams coordinator Cam Atchard is terrible. Like, literally, I mean, they should fire him and move Joe Judge to the special teams coordinator position. Chad Ryland, I mean, that Fairhaven kicker could have easily made that field goal.
All right. Well, we saw a 42-yard field goal kicked by the kid from Fairhaven the other day. So
Grant Darmafall.
Yeah, Grant Darmafall. So, hey, the wind was with him. The goalposts are a little wider, but that was an amazing kick by the kid. So let's see what Chris thinks.
So, Ben, you wouldn't mind like a Caleb Williams, a May, a Bo Nix, maybe Penix Jr. from Washington, going in that direction instead of maybe free agency, or if someone says, hey, I'll take Zappy or Mac in a trade and maybe get someone in that area, but you're more leaning toward the free agency and the draft.
But basically what I'm thinking of is like going for a guy that really knows the system really well, who can really lead the system. But at the same time, I say if we get the top 3 pick, go for wide receivers like Marvin Harrison Jr. from Ohio State. The other day he was balling off the other night against Michigan. I think he scored a touchdown or 2. And in the second round, get Bo Nix or Michael Penix Jr. from Washington.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Penix Jr., he's a great leader. But I don't know how the Patriots are going to work with him because, he can run around the system because he's a running quarterback, and mostly the Patriots like to throw on the checkdowns.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ben. Hey, thanks a lot for the call. We appreciate it. Call again.
All right. Thank you, Paul.
All right. Ben from Dartmouth. Interesting comments from Ben. What do you think about that? I mean, he sounds like he wants to go first round, get the wide receiver, don't get the quarterback till the second round. But what about next year? We're going to throw the brand new quarterback in there?
No. See, now this one I don't mind. I like his theory that, listen, Paul, there is more positions on this team that need to be filled than just the quarterback.
Exactly.
So I can agree if let's say they get the 2 or 3rd pick and you want to go Marvin Harrison as a big wide receiver, I don't mind that pick at all. Then come back in the next round and say, wait a minute. All right, is Nix available? Is Penix available? Somebody else that might be in your head thinking, if I can't get Williams and if I can't get May, and maybe I just don't want to go in that route because that's too high for me at that time. I have no problem seeing the Patriots do that. So that I agree with Ben. That's something that they may do in the draft. Go big at another position first, then come back with a quarterback after.
Now, if we think of a quarterback, right, your desire would be to have that newly drafted quarterback start just like Mac Jones did his rookie year, or do you have him behind Jones, or do you have a competition, or what do you do there? That's a very difficult prospect to figure all that out.
Well, you look at what Carolina's done. They put all their price and all their money on Bryce Young. You look at what Houston's done. They put it all on C.J. Stroud. You can look at a lot of other teams who've done this in the past, and they're throwing him right into the fire. The kid from Indianapolis, I mean, he got hurt, but Richardson was starting right from the beginning too. So, no, they expect them to be ready coming out of college and getting ready into the pro set. So, no, I expect them, if they draft a number 1 round quarterback, that person should start. He's the number 1 pick. You have to start him.
Well, remember, even mediocre Mac started his rookie year, and he got a lot of votes for rookie of the year. I mean, they went 10-7. I mean, he played very conservatively. the offensive coordinator, McDaniels, he was very careful with them, and he kind of went down the field methodically and stuff like that. And he did kind of fade in the second half, too, when the Patriots played the tougher competition. But all in all, that was a very good year. But remember, that's also the year that the Patriots went absolutely bananas in the free agent market, right? Now, they're going to have a lot of room in the cap. Plus, they've been criticized a lot because they're number 30th in the league in spending, which I find that to be really offensive. I mean, we're like the number one, I think, area in the entire country in terms of, being a sports town. In the past, the Red Sox, they all spend to the cap. You know what I mean? And baseball, there is no cap. There's just some punishment if you go over a certain amount. But by and large, we're not cheap with the wallet. We're not supposed to be. So why are the Patriots cheap with the wallet? I mean, that first year, they went out and spent all kind of money, and some of them were busts, but some of them were successful, and that got them to 10-7. Now they've let people go. They won't pay people. This team is inferior to that team that Mac Jones had in his rookie year.
No, I agree. And that's why I'm saying in that draft, there's more positions that you need to fill than just the quarterback role. And so that's something that they should take a real good look at and say, hey, I'm not saying offensive lineman, but I would definitely say a Harrison, somebody in that position, a good receiver to say, whoa, let's take this guy. We'll start here and then see who we can compare with him and get a quarterback afterwards, or whether you went out and did it free agency or some other way, and then pick more pieces as you go. And like you say, spend that money. Again, we're trying to talk Patriots here. I see my boy Chops Turner still on those 49ers, and he's 49ers all the way. And he's got a big game coming up this week with the Eagles, who had a tough one with Buffalo. So expect a good one there, Chops, between San Fran and Philadelphia.
I'll tell you, when I'm watching the San Francisco 49ers, I'm chuckling to myself because I know that Chops is on the edge of his seat. And then when I'm watching the Dallas Cowboys, I know you're on the edge of your seat, and Ryan from Rochester on the edge of his seat. And I can just kind of kick back now because, eventually I think San Francisco and Dallas could be on a collision course in the NFC playoffs. And if that happens, I'm just going to sit back because one of you guys is going to be rubbing it in my face. But the other guy, I'm going to be able to have a little dance myself, because somebody's going down. And we've talked about Dak not having the it factor and all that. I'm going to tell you, in Philadelphia, they just look tough to me. I don't know. They're a tough, hard-nosed team. They grind out those small yardage. And that game the other day, Hurts, he put the ball up and made a nice pass toward the end of that game. It wasn't just like putting your head down and pounding in there. He threw the ball really well in the clutch that ended up winning that game.
Yeah, and he can run the ball, so that makes him even a dual threat, which teams have to be aware of. But I think you're right. I think Philadelphia has a little bit more up front and a little bit more on the defensive side, where they just look more physical than a lot of other teams. So there's really something about them. But at the same time, McCaffrey is a great ball player, and they got that dynamic guy in the backfield there, and they got a couple of good receivers as well. So it will be fun to watch those two teams battle out to see who can get probably 1 and 2 seed. I think Dallas stays in the wild card, unless we can find a way to beat Philadelphia, and at the same time they start dropping a couple of other games. But I don't see it. But only one team can win, Paul, out of the 32 in the league. And at the same time, your goal is to get to the playoffs and see what happens after that. So hopefully we just continue to run. We got a big 5-game stretch coming up. Seattle on Thursday, followed by Philadelphia, Buffalo, Miami, and Detroit. So that's going to tell me how good this Cowboys team is in the next 5 weeks. I don't care what they did the last 5 or 6 weeks. They won games they're supposed to. Teams they played were not very good. These next 5 weeks will tell me how good Dallas really is.
Wow, that sounds like a pretty challenging stretch there for the Dallas Cowboys. So we'll see how they do against some quality teams.
Sure.
The question of the day, what should the Patriots do? The 2-9 Patriots, should they get a new quarterback from the draft? Should they look into free agency? Should they give Mac Jones another chance? It's interesting because you look at Purdy, right? And I'm watching Purdy, and he's got a stronger arm than Mac Jones. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm.
But, how much of it is him? And it's kind of like the old Bill Tom thing. like how good is Purdy? Like, if you took Purdy and threw him on the Patriots, would it be a disaster? If you put Mac Jones on San Francisco, I don't know if they'd be the best team in the league because I do think Purdy is better than Jones. But,
Mhm.
the thing is, if you're playing and you're winning, let's say that first game against Philadelphia. Okay, we don't want to go back and rehash all these games. They lost the game 25-20. They had a chance to win that game. Suppose, I don't know, suppose they pull that game out. Okay, now there's like confidence in the locker room. Everybody's happy. It's like it's a snowball effect. You lose this week, you lose next week, you lose next week, you lose next week, and it just like spirals out of control. But if the Patriots were 2-1 or 3-2, after 5 games, and we're flirting with a playoff spot and everything else, the whole field, the whole season is different. There are guys out there, I'm sure that, hey, they're trying to play for contracts and stuff like that. But if you have a chance to really go in there and take a big hit or just say the hell with it, you know what I mean? Like everybody knows the season lost. So I don't know. I think this season could have been different had the Patriots done a little bit more, signing some good players to complement whatever successful draft picks they had, and giving Mac Jones at least a fighting chance.
Well, winning breeds momentum, winning breeds confidence, winning breeds locker room camaraderie. Right now, in the last 2 or 3 games, I am seeing a different Mac Jones. He is not in it mentally, in my eyes. He looks like deer with the headlights right now. He is shell-shocked. I don't know if he's coming or going, and he's throwing balls that now he should not even be throwing. Before, at least he was not even attempting. Now he's trying to fit balls in where it doesn't belong, and he does not look like a confident man at all. So if I'm New England, I start Zappy right now, next game, rest of the season, as long as he keeps going. And if not, then I just, go back and forth until I get an opportunity to finish this season. And then I make my decision after that. But Mac Jones does not look good mentally out there on the field at all.
And even now, Zappy has still not been given a chance to play a whole game. He comes in the second half, and you can say, well, he's got a whole half. I mean, that other game he came in at the last drive with 2 minutes left. That was really kind of a bizarre decision there, but that's what happened. And, this last game, he got into the half, so he had the whole half, and he marched them down the field, at least put together one good drive. But then after that, he threw a bad ball. But, I'm looking at Zappy, right? Okay, so Zappy certainly, is not going to be in the mention for Hall of Fame anytime soon. I think he's fairly close to Jones. I thought that he gave him a spark last year. They should have left him in there until he lost. I mean, we play you win, you keep playing until you lose. That's the way I looked at it. Mm-hmm. And they went back to Mac Jones. I thought that was a mistake. But anyway, I'm looking at Zappy, right? So he marched him down the field the first time, but then he gets the ball a second time. There was one play there. He dropped back into the pocket. He's looking downfield. There's nobody open. I think there was one play where either the receivers ran the wrong route or the receivers bumped into each other. And he's looking down the field. The receivers are bumping into each other. Next thing you know, he's getting sacked. He's not the tallest guy. I mean, Bailey Zappi, you put him in there. He's still got a team that's, with no weapons. So what do we expect him to do? I don't think it's going to look any different with Zappi in there.
No, but he might give you enough where he's able to run a little bit better. He might be able to, flush the pocket a little bit better. He might have a little bit stronger arm to get to a couple of passes that maybe some defensive backs deflected on Mac Jones' noodle arm a little bit, that he couldn't get to the, to the receiver in time. So there's some different ways, and maybe it's just some people in that huddle just seem to react a little bit different when the confidence is behind them. So, there's some little subtle things that can happen between quarterbacks.
I know you see the comment there, Chris, from Scott Medeiros, should have given Will Greer a chance to play. The kid played great in the preseason. Why sign him if you have no interest in a losing season?
Well, again, this is a guy coming from the Cowboys who was behind Dak and Cooper Rush. And he did play a couple of preseason games, didn't look that bad, and knows pretty much a good offensive scheme. So I am agreeing with Scott. I don't understand. And there's a couple of guys. Cunningham was the other guy, I believe. Malik, another guy they let go or who's not on the roster anymore, too, or wherever he is, practice team. But there's a couple of guys that you bring in. I guess they can't handle the knowledge of the Patriots offense or the schemes or whatever it is. And they can't do better job than Jones and Zappi? I don't see it, but as Scott says, why not give somebody else a chance? Because what you're doing right now, and you're averaging down to, I think, 11 points a game. It could get worse and be the worst team in the history of the NFL in points scored in one season on an average. So hopefully that don't happen to them. But I'm agreeing with Scott on that one.
And take a look at the job the defense has done, right? Now, I know Indianapolis and the New York Giants don't have the greatest offenses, but, 10-6, 10-7. Washington game, 20-17. I mean, Las Vegas, 21-17. I mean, the defense is keeping the Patriots hanging around, and, they must be going out there saying, what the hell are we doing? We're going out there, we're only giving up 10 points, and we can't win these damn games, So that's not good for a locker room either.
No, it's not. But they're putting you in position to win a ball game or to at least get downfield. And you look at what the Bears did last night. They just relied on Cairo Santos to kick, 4 field goals and win. I mean, can we get enough to get close enough to maybe get this guy some more reps to kick a field goal? Of course, he did miss the last one, which everybody is shocked about. But, you got to have an opportunity to move the ball down the field better.
Well, I was glad to see Cousin Cairo come out and kick that field goal, and I was thinking to myself, I almost texted you because we like to call him Cousin Cairo. But, when he goes out onto that field and he gets ready to line up that kick and I see that Santos across the back there, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm loving every second of this. I'm loving every second of this. All right, let's go to Ryan from Rochester. Good evening. You're on Santos on Sports.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Pretty good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. So first off, just when you think it couldn't get any worse, just when you think it could not get any worse, it just now we're losing to undrafted free agent quarterbacks. And nice rookie 4th-round kicker there, Bill.
Yeah, I was commenting how we let a lot of guys go that probably could have won in some games. Like, for example, Nick Folk.
Yep, that's the prime example right there. And so much for his value of kickers. He valued to a point where he drafted 4th-round kicker who, as we know, his draft picks kind of suck. So no shocker there. But to answer the question, I'd say that the ideal scenario for getting whoever the next quarterback is going to be. I'd say the most ideal situation is we get one of the top two or three picks and we either land say like a Drake May or a Caleb Williams, or alternatively, we somehow managed to land Marvin Harrison Jr. because if we have the opportunity to draft one of the more generational wide receiver prospects in years, since I want to say like Calvin Johnson was the last one that has gotten this much hype, I'd say grab him and then maybe trade back into the first round and grab, say, a Bo Nix or a Jaden Daniels if one of those guys fall. But say the ideal scenario, Drake May or Caleb Williams, and then whoever the new management is, so try and surround him with an offensive line and some competent weapons, because this has to be like the dumbest wide receiver core that I've seen in quite some time. And I gotta say, I'm not impressed with Troy Brown as a wide receivers coach at all. Like, these guys are running all the wrong routes. They can't seem to get the communication on the line of scrimmage right at all. It's just a mess. And alternatively to the draft, I don't know, maybe if I'd say a Justin Fields is available, or maybe we're in on Kirk Cousins if Minnesota doesn't retain him. But I feel like they're gonna want to bring him back, especially after how Josh Dobbs played last night. Ugh, not good. So, but I would say draft would probably be my number one preference, I would say.
Ryan, if you take with your first pick, and let's say you got 2 or 3, and you go with a Williams or a May, do you think that he starts right away? Number one, he doesn't sit behind Zappi and Mack. He goes in right away, even as the first year, like what Stroud and Young have done this year, and you just throw him to the Wolves and say, go get him. Or can you wait on that? And as you said, is it just better to take the Harrison move because you need more positions than just the quarterback? Fill it with him and then come back, whether you trade into the late first or beginning second, Bo Nix, Daniels, Penix Jr., or whatever. Can you see it that way? Because I think if you do Williams in Maine, you're costing yourself 2-3 years to rebuild, unless that's the route that you want to go, because the situation you've put yourself in, it's going to take 2-3 years to get you back where you think you belong.
That's actually a good question, and I 100% agree with you there. Like if you in a position to draft a Caleb Williams or a Drake May, you almost don't have a choice but to give them the starting job right away, especially with the way CJ Stroud is playing now. Now, obviously, the counter argument to that is like, well, Bryce Young got thrown to the Wolves and look how that's going. But at the same time, probably my worst take of all time was that Carolina would win the division this year, because I thought it was such a good situation. That was as wrong as it gets. But honestly, I'd also be okay with that other scenario you were talking about. Get a Marvin Harrison Jr., maybe trade back into the first round, or maybe see if one of these quarterbacks fall to the second round, grab him there, and then grab a quality veteran. Doesn't have to be like Kirk Cousins tier. That would be preferable, but it doesn't have to be. Just a viable starter that would allow one of these young quarterbacks to at least sit for at least half a season, and just so they can marinate and kind of adjust to the league as such.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I got to tell you, that's an interesting analysis, which I think is perfectly fine. I don't see the Patriots doing that, because just based on their past decision making, even Tom Brady and every quarterback after that. I mean, they went from Tom Brady to Cam Newton to Mac Jones with some Bailey Zappi thrown in, so they haven't really stepped up and said, okay, you know what, we're going to lay out the wallet for a quarterback. Bill was even reluctant to grab a quarterback in the first round, it sounds like a lot of people are saying when we hear the scuttlebutt. So, it's a real difficult situation. We do have a couple of quick comments here. Marvin Harrison Jr., according to Scott Medeiros, is claiming he isn't sure if he's going to declare for the draft. With these new college deals, who knows if that holds any weight. And Mark Sylvia from Chicago, Illinois, says you can't draft a quarterback at 2 or 3, too many holes. What is Williams going to do with the skill group the Patriots have and the offensive line? Quarterback has to come from the draft, but has to be a later pick.
Really now, listen, I like what Mark's saying, but remember, they have the money to spend on free agency. They, and plus they have more draft picks. So, you can still build that up and surround it with a Williams if you're going to spend the money that you're supposed to get better, to shape up that skill group and shape up that offensive line. So Mark is right in one way, but I think if the Patriots spend the way they can and with the money that they have and go with a Williams early and then get a lot around with it, then it doesn't look that bad. So, there's two ways to look at that one.
And Ryan, what about the coach? Who's going to be coaching next year with this plan of getting a new quarterback and going in the draft and, spending money on free agent and all that? Yeah, but who's calling the shots in the football operations?
So preferably it's not going to be Bill, both being the head coach and also running the front office, because, Bill can push back on it as much as he wants. But we all know that he's essentially the coach and the GM all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And, Mark makes some good points there. But, like Chris had said, like, you can help surround the quarterback by, getting some proven free agents at other positions to surround them. And Paul, you make a good point too. Like, Bill was reluctant to even grab a quarterback in the first round to begin with. The hope there was that, there'd be a new head coach, whether it be Gerard Mayo or someone else brand new who's a fresh voice, and also a restructured front office general manager who's, one, isn't reluctant to take a quarterback in the first round, and two, is actually willing to spend that money to help, improve the situation around said quarterback.
Things are so bad that it just feels like, wow, there's so many holes to fill. As Chris pointed out before, there's so much to do, even in addition to the quarterback. It's just like, it's been so long since the Patriots have been in this position where there's just so many holes to fill. It's like a boat with holes all over the place. Which one do you fill first? And like, Ryan was saying, Chris, do you grab the quarterback right away, or do you grab the wide receiver and get the quarterback later? That's another big decision that years later you look back and it's like, oh, you should have done this, you should have done that. Who knows how that would work out? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and Mark Sylvia, he's agreeing with what I had to say about that, but he's also saying who's going to make these decisions and who's going to make this hiring. Is it going to be Bill, or are they going to go in a different route? And he said, some personal depth people from the Eagles and the 49ers, and have them build the team. So it will be interesting to see how that pans out. But I think if they go with that quarterback early, they definitely have to spend some money and get people around him, whether it's Bill or whether it's somebody new. They're going to have to do that. If they go that wide receiver route and then come back with a quarterback later on in the draft, second or third round, whatever. But still, free agency can make things happen for you just as much. And the Patriots have always been a good organization where people usually want to go to them. So let's see if that's what wants to hold true. Ryan, who do you finish out the year with? I think you got to go with Zappe starting the next game against the Chargers, see how he does. And if he's that bad, well, then you make the move back to Mac. But I think you start him right from the opening kickoff to the end until he can't prove himself.
I 100% agree with that. Like here's the thing: they really should have just done this whole thing this past week. I think they handled this week better than they did that Colts game in Germany, where it's like, okay, 2 minutes, go win the game for us, Bailey. Like, yeah. And the thing is too, like, you can only. I know we said this last time after the Colts game, but you can only do this whole thing where you start Mac, you bench him, you start him, you bench him, you start him, you bench him. That can only go for so long until you just look at it and say, okay, you know what, enough of this. We're just going to go with Bailey Zappe going forward. And if he does well, he does well. If not, then we'll look into the offseason for different options there. But the more they keep doing that, the more Mac just gets broken by the minute, as if it couldn't get any worse for him. And it just goes to show the dysfunction and the fact that Bill just wants to keep playing games with people as if that's helping the team, but it's not.
To the both of you guys, do you see Josh McDaniels back with the Patriots maybe for next year? I don't know at what position, but could you see him back as a Patriot?
Well, he's very successful as offensive coordinator, but like Bill and Bruce Arians and everybody else, you're as good as the players you got to play with. So, I mean, he was a good offensive coordinator, did a good job with Mac Jones. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with it. I don't know if the Patriots would do it. You got Bill O'Brien in there, but, maybe Bill O'Brien feels like he wants to move on. I don't know, but I like Scott McDaniels as offensive coordinator, obviously better than his head coach.
I agree with that too. But at the same time, I kind of look at it as, I feel like the future going forward is going to, at least for a while, is going to be the two guys that Kraft mentioned in that press release. And from listening to the Burt Breers of the world, listening to the Phil Perrys of the world, it seems like that going forward, Kraft is at least for right now committed to two guys, Gerard Mayo and Billy O'Brien, who wasn't mentioned in that original press release, but obviously him putting out there, okay, we're looking for an offensive coordinator, that ultimately led to that. And again, listening to Burt Breer and Phil Perry on Zolak and Bertrand and shows like that, it seems like they're just committed with Billy O'Brien going forward as the offensive coordinator. Now, obviously, I would love Josh McDaniels just back as a quarterbacks coach instead of Evan Rothstein or whoever the hell it is now. But I just feel like it's going to be Billy O'Brien going forward.
And Mayo's name, Ryan, just came up in the Carolina Panthers' new head coaching position as a candidate, as a top 5 candidate. So he already may be going for an interview pretty soon.
All right, Ryan. Hey, thanks a lot for your usual insightful call. And maybe when you call the next time, things will be a little bit better. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it, but we got other teams to talk about too. But thank you very much for calling.
No problem. Hopefully things are better. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Thanks, Ryan.
Chris, I know you see that comment from Lorianne LaFleur Alston from Florida talking about Jim Plunkett. That's what it feels like here. What do you think about that?
I remember those days, and I remember getting
you there?
And I remember getting on a bus and going to see those games and Schaefer Stadium and sitting on those cold seats. Probably been on the bus leaving out of St. Luke's. going to that a long time ago just to watch NFL games. And then look at Scott Medeiros thinking that maybe Bill's using Mac to continue to tank job this team. And so they get a very high draft pick at the end of the year. So another possibility saying, hey, we're going to lose. We might as well lose big and go down and get an early draft pick.
Well, Chris, I feel a wind coming in from the Midwest. I feel some wind coming in from Illinois right now. It's blowing in quite strongly.
Big win last night.
Oh,
that win could be coming from anywhere.
That was an exciting game. Mark from Chicago, how are you doing tonight?
You said big game last night. I didn't know if I was watching an NFL game or if that was Iowa, Nebraska all over again. Hey, I'll tell you guys. I think before they start figuring out what they want to do at the quarterback position and how they want to fill holes for next year, Kraft has got to make some tough decisions because he's got to say it's the old Bill Parcells things, or who's buying the groceries. Mm-hmm. Paul, you said it earlier. You could have signed Jacoby Myers, re-signed him. You could have signed DeAndre Hopkins. There were some offensive linemen that were available in free agency. You didn't even offer a contract. You could have kept Nick Folk, who is as reliable as it comes. And then even with Mac, is it a 7-win team right now with just those changes that you made? So you got to have somebody, and it's not Bill, that how are we going to rebuild this team going into next year? And what you guys have just been talking about, you can't keep going back and forth. You know, he's been benched 4 times now. So clearly when he starts the game, the offense has no confidence, and they know, hey, he's probably not going to finish the game. They don't have confidence in Zappi. You got to make a decision and say, hey, this is who's going to go the next couple of games. Because I heard a press conference yesterday. It sounds like last week all over again. He hasn't named a starter. Everybody's going to be ready. We're throwing, and listen to the other players. Hunter Henry, a respected veteran. What did he say last week at the press conference after the game? He says, same story, different week. These guys are frustrated. Make a decision, but I think you gotta. Who's going to build the team? You got to figure that out first.
And in addition to that, Mark, Hunter Henry, they asked him, when did you know who was starting? And he said, well, it was earlier today. Like earlier today? I mean, you're going to be kidding me. I know other people said differently. They knew the night before or something like that. But Chris, that whole thing where, the players don't even know who's starting. I mean, what the heck is that? I mean, this is supposed to be the greatest coach of all time. I mean, that's bizarre, isn't it?
I believe that it is because, listen, I want to know right away, what my lineup is, who's my go-to guy, whether I trust him or don't, whatever it is. But we have a game plan. We know what it is, not next man up and whoever's ready, and I'll do it my way and we go through. But that being said, guys, when they had it a couple of years ago, Mark, and they gave Bill the money, they said, okay, Bill, go get him, pal. And you went out and got Jonas Smith, and you went out and got Hunter Henry, and you went out and got Devontae Parker, and you went out and did this. That obviously didn't work out except for probably Hunter Henry. Besides that, the rest of them have been there. So you gave Bill the grocery bill and the list, and you gave him the money and said, go do it. It wasn't done. I don't see him doing it again. And like Paul says, they got the money to spend. There's got to be another way to go do this. I don't know. Do you trust Bill again to do that? I can't see how after the first time he did it a couple of years ago.
I agree with everything you just said. And the problem with it is you're building for the future now. People are, if they wait and Kraft waits till the off season to make a move, you're already behind the 8 ball. Like, you got to start planning on how we want to approach a rebuild. How do we want to rebuild the roster now? And you can't do that if you don't make a decision on the future. So I'm not suggesting he's got to get rid of Bill now, but somebody's got to come forward and start articulating what that plan is at management level, or so they can start planning for the future. Now, getting back to the draft, listen, I'm of the opinion, I started doing some research, and if you look at the amount of number 1 quarterbacks, first quarterback taken, you got Joe Burrow, Peyton Manning. Very few of them have panned out. Mahomes was number 10. Josh Allen, I think, was 8 or 9. You talked about Brock Purdy. And everybody says Caleb Williams. Everybody says Drake May. And I'm going, how do you know? I look at the kid from Michigan, McCarthy. I think you can get him later. He's a 3-year starter. He has an NFL quarterback as a head coach in an NFL-run system. Okay, you got Bo Nix is putting up all kind of numbers. I think he started 4 years, 2 different programs, played in the SEC prior. He'll be a later pick for sure, maybe Penix. But I think you got to fill some of the big holes first, rather than taking the big splash at 2 or 3 with the quarterback who's going to come into the same situation you're in now. You got to fill some of these holes, whether it's free agency or at the beginning of the draft, and try to grab a quarterback later. I love bringing in Kirk Cousins, but not at $20 million a year.
No, I agree with you there, Mark. And I'm a firm believer that you need some skilled position players, especially in the wide receiver department. I think that is a necessity right now for the New England Patriots. They have to find more weapons there because the guys you have in there are just not doing it. There's no separation. They're not getting open. Again, maybe Mac's arm's not strong enough to maybe make some of them throws, but I'm just not seeing enough out of that core. They have to make something, and I think they got to do it early, as you said, now, getting prepared for next year. Whether it's Harrison in the draft, whether it's free agency, they have to make some kind of move in that department at the wide receiver. Has to start there because that's the NFL. It's points. They're throwing the ball all around the place. And it's very difficult for defense to play defense nowadays because flags are being thrown. You got to find kids that can get open and get separation and force those flags, go for 50-50 balls, things like that. They have to do that position more than anything else. To me, for the New England, is wide receiver.
Hey, this could be an outlandish comment, but I might put an argument out there that says Tyquan Thornton is a worse draft pick than N'Keal Harry. He looks terrible. But think about when we talk about picking the groceries and who's making those decisions. Look at some of the players we could have drafted. We could have. How do you think Deebo Samuel would look in a Patriots uniform? How about DK Metcalf? How would he look in a Patriots? We don't have, back when we had Scott Pioli and those guys, they analyzed the draft, they made decisions, and not to switch gears, but I think Bill's losing his fastball coaching too. I read a stat the other day, and you always used to hear about rookie quarterbacks. They could never win against the Patriots. Well, the Giants game, this was the first time that the Patriots under Bill Belichick have ever lost to an undrafted rookie. It never happened. Never happened before.
Mark, let me stop you on that because I want to go back to, and I got it in front of me, and you give me your honest opinion here. Next year, free agent wide receivers, Mike Evans, Odell Beckham Jr., Tyler Boyd, Cedric Wilson, DJ Shock. You got Hardman, Braxton Burrows. You have Josh Reynolds, Randall Cobb, Calvin Ridley. You got some names out there that, could be intriguing to say. T. Higgins. Couple of guys out there wouldn't be bad in a New England uniform.
Well, we have an interesting comment here from our good friend Chris Resendiz. Chris, great to hear from you.
Yep.
Mac has a stronger arm than Tua. Wow, that's an interesting comment. I'm not so sure about that, but the rest of the comment I 100% agree with. In fact, I had said this at the top of the show. The only young quarterbacks who are succeeding are those surrounded by talent. Stroud, Tua, Purdy, Hurts, Mahomes, even the great Mahomes, who some consider to be the best quarterback in the league, would have trouble being successful with this roster. What say you, Mark?
It's a terrible roster. There's no doubt about it. And, again, I'm more of a planner. I like to be upfront on this stuff. And to Chris's point, hey, these are the free agent receivers. Well, I think you got to know what your plan is for the draft. You're not going to go after one of those big stud receivers if you're going to draft, Marvin Harrison at 2 or 3. So you got to plan all that stuff out. Now, I would tell you right now, I'd throw the bank at Mike Evans. Now, on the flip side of it, you got to look at a guy like Mike Evans and you're going to go, hey, this is my last contract. Am I gonna go to New England and play with who, or am I gonna go to one of the premium teams in the league that can play for a championship? So it's not as easy as, hey, we're gonna go after Calvin Ridley or T. Higgins or Mike Evans. Do they want to come to New England? That might not be a destination anymore, guys.
Yeah, that's for sure. Hey, how about this? How about keeping Mac Jones and surrounding him with all kind of talent?
Yeah, I think, listen, for me, that ship sailed. I think, but again, I think you touched on it earlier, Paul. Like, Mac's got to sit because
you got to give him a break.
You can't keep starting him and then yank him the minute he. And Chris said it earlier. I was listening earlier. He's making throws now that he's never made before. He's making throws that aren't even close, and you're going, boy, he doesn't have any idea what's going on, and his mind is shot. And listen, they're having the same conversations here in Chicago about the quarterback they got. So it's a very similar situation, but you can't screw up the quarterback position. You got to have a quarterback, but you got to also have pieces around him. You got to.
What about your quarterback? Is he going to be a free agent?
Can you see Fields in New England?
I would not. I would not. I'm not. I'm disenchanted with Fields. But again, similar situation, guys. You got nobody developing them, and I don't think the coaching in Chicago is any different than the coaching. Listen, say what you want about Bill. When he had Brady, he had Brady. But without Brady, like, Bill didn't develop Brady. Brady had the skill set, right? Brady had a leadership. Brady was a coach on the field. And I know we were supposed to get better bringing in O'Brien, but I got to say, who is developing? Like, who are you becoming a better quarterback as a young kid coming in New England with the team they got in place from a coaching position? Are you getting developed? Are you getting coached up, as they say? I don't know that they are. I really don't.
All right, Mark. Well, thank you very much for calling in from the Windy City.
Absolutely.
And we hope to hear from you again soon.
All right, guys. Hey, listen. Let's hope for the best, but 3-14 might be the best.
I'm gonna go back and look because there were a couple of guys that predicted that at the beginning, and I was like, "Who are these guys?"
All I would tell you guys is I think the last game of the year against the Jets, that's probably the only chance for a win the rest of the season, in my opinion.
Just think what the tickets might be going for by then. It'd be like 10 degrees outside. You're playing in last place. There's gonna be a lot of empty seats, I think.
Unless you want to go and see Aaron Rodgers, that's the only reason you go to that game. But all right, guys, hey, enjoy the rest of the show.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Mark from Chicago checking in here on Santos on Sports. I'm watching Justin Fields. I put the game on kind of late because I was doing my other show. So I come in and I'm like, well, let me put on Monday Night Football. I put Monday Night Football on. I think Justin Fields coughed up the ball twice in 5 minutes. He had the ball, he fumbled, and the next time he got the ball and fumbled. Because I was thinking to myself, all right, let me watch Justin Fields. Thinking maybe pick a guy like that. He's probably going to be cheaper than some of these other quarterbacks. Get him in the right system. Maybe the Patriots can have a running quarterback a little bit. And he looked kind of sloppy, but then again, I don't know what the coaching is like out there. And then I was asking about Cousins because I haven't really been, focusing on Minnesota. I know he got hurt, but I thought he would have been back by now. So he's out injured. So it's like, what are you going to do there? He's going to ask for all kinds of money in free agency, even though he's been out injured, and then he comes back. Maybe he's not the same player. We could go on for 5 hours about the Patriots and still not solve all the problems.
Yeah, and Achilles is a tough injury.
It is.
To come back from too. So
yeah,
Cousins is going to have his work cut out for him with that one. As much as when Aaron Rodgers comes back, because that's a tough injury. But we'll see how they play out with that. Fields is he's more of a runner first than a thrower. He's trying to become that thrower. But if you're going to run in the NFL, boy, you better make sure you know what you're doing because the speed is so fast on defense. And you saw it last night, Paul. He took a couple of hits, and boom, that ball came flying out. So, it's tough in the NFL.
And then the thing, too, they protect the quarterbacks, but the quarterbacks, when you run the ball, you got to do that slide. And if you don't do that slide, we have a lot of quarterbacks that have been injured trying to run the ball a little bit too much. In fact, Garoppolo was one of them, and he wasn't really a running quarterback, but he hurt himself pretty bad a few years ago, and I'm not sure he's been the same after that. So, these guys that are running around, even Mahomes, you don't see Mahomes running like he used to. He's smart when he runs. He can scramble around. He can find the open receiver. He directs traffic and all that. But you'll notice that when he's running, I mean, he can see that first down marker, but, man, you don't want Mahomes to take a hit, and you end up losing him for the year. Look what happened to Cincinnati. Burrow got hurt. It wasn't running the ball, but, you lose a guy like that, your season is over. I mean, even Hurts. Hurts is the big, strong, powerful guy, does the tush push and all that. But when he runs the ball, he's smart. You can see him looking around. I mean, he could probably take a hit because he's such a big, strong man.
He slides.
But he slides. They know when to
Slides.
go into that slide. And even Josh Allen, he's a guy that you can't. Man, the Patriots, they just couldn't bring him down a couple of years back when they were playing him. It's like, oh, they had him. No, they don't have him. They have him. No, they don't have him. And then you see like our quarterbacks, they can't scramble. They can't move around. He just kind of stands there like the Statue of Liberty, I mean, I think that running part, as long as you do it correctly, is a really big, tool to have in the toolbox for the modern quarterback.
Yeah, you have to pick and choose. And I remember when Mahomes first came, he did a lot of running, and he got banged up a couple of times. And I think he sat back and said, wait a minute, I'm going to be a thrower, and then I'll run when I have to run. And when I do, I make sure I get out of bounds right away, or I slide right away. He's very intelligent. He did it the right way. Hurts, too. I think Hurts took a couple of shots a couple of years there and said, wait a minute, I better make sure that I last a long time as well. So I saw him take off the other day in that game to win it against Buffalo. It was a great run, big hole, and he went for the end zone. By then he was getting cornerbacks on him. So he was happy to get what he needed to get. But yeah, very smart, intelligent. And Josh Allen's the same way. I just think Josh tries to do a little bit too much, and he better be careful too, because he's getting away with it right now because of his size. But there's always someone a little bit bigger than you, so that right timing could come up. Hopefully he's careful.
And how about Lamar Jackson? Look what he's doing for Baltimore this year. I mean, he's another guy that you can't bring him down. He's running the ball all over the place, but he's improved his ability to throw the ball. And the Ravens are looking tough.
Well, he did take a whole year off last year, if we recall, and it was with an injury. And I think he's seeing the writing on the wall too, going, I need to take off when it's appropriate. So these guys have to make, better commitments to the throw, and then worry about the run when it's really time for a big first down or something like that. And I think they're doing a better job of it, and it's shown, and it's winning games for them, especially for Lamar Jackson.
Well, we only have a couple of minutes left, but I'm loving this last comment here.
Go ahead.
From Mark Sylvia. Do you see it there? Jimmy G might make some sense. Draft a wide receiver and an offensive lineman, maybe another quarterback in the later rounds. Jimmy G, short-term answer, while the young quarterback sits and learns. And, of course, that would be reuniting Belichick, if we keep Belichick and we bring in Jimmy G. I mean, talk about a guy that, he's like glass out there, like you hit him, he breaks, and that's it. But that's an interesting thing. I mean, this is a guy that Bill wanted to succeed Brady. And, the thought process is a Kraft step in and say, wait a minute, and then, that kind of reinvigorated Brady, and Brady started playing like, getting reinvigorated, and ended up winning those 3 Super Bowls, the second cluster of 3 Super Bowls. But Jimmy G, I don't know. I think he's a little too banged up and a little too fragile.
Well, you're asking him again to be a short-term answer, as Mark said. And now if you pick someone from the draft to sit behind and do the clipboard and watch all that and do all the stuff that they need. Now, what happens with Zappy? What happens with Jones? Do you let those guys sit behind in Jimmy G? Or you say, hey, no, and learn more, or they're done. We're getting rid of them. And now we're adding someone new and let them learn the system. So big decisions ahead in the next few years for the New England Patriots, especially at the most important position, the quarterback. And that's why we reached out today to everybody to talk about that question. Where does New England go next?
Well, you know what they used to say about Jimmy G? I'm not so sure that still is the case. All as Jimmy does is win.
Yeah, you remember that, huh? But then that turned to losses pretty quickly. That turned to missing a lot of games too. So, I remember that. Yeah, everybody used to talk about that. All he does is win. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's take the opportunity to thank our sponsors, Attorney John Seed, 156 8th Street in New Bedford. You can check John out at johnseedlaw.com. We have Lakeville Athletic Club with one location at 325 Bedford Street in Lakeville, Massachusetts, where you can play tennis and pickleball. Citywide Glass, that's the place with the 3 locations. 425 State Road in Dartmouth. They have additional locations in Fall River and Taunton. And Scotty's Pub, where I think Chris has thrown back a few in his day and still does. 202 Pleasant Street in the great city of Fall River. Thanks to Ben from Dartmouth, Ryan from Rochester, Mark from Chicago, and the other folks that have commented today here on Santos on Sports. We appreciate it. Always fun, and boy, there's so much to talk about. I didn't think we'd be talking about like a total disaster. I thought we'd be talking about, maybe if we win one more game and pull off an upset, maybe we sneak into the playoffs or something like that, right around 500, No, it's like a sinking ship disaster. And as Lorianne LaFleur Alston pointed out, this is like watching Jim Plunkett again from when, I remember Jim Plunkett. Do you remember Jim Plunkett playing for the Patriots?
Oh, yes, I do. I remember it very well. Sure.
Of course, he ended up winning a Super Bowl when he went to a team that had talent. You see how that works?
He went to the Raiders.
Yeah, you see how that works? I mean, he's surrounded. He looks like a bum over here, but then you put him over here, all of a sudden he looks good now. See?
Well, I mean, again, you surround yourself with talent. Patriots need a lot more than just the quarterback. They got a lot of holes to fill. But that being said, Paul, as we finish up, I want to give a special shout out to a team from Fairhaven that's going for the Super Bowl on Thursday, and that's a Division VI Super Bowl. They will be at Gillette Stadium, where the Fairhaven Blue Devils will take on the Salem Witches at a 3:00 game this Thursday. So good luck to Fairhaven and bring back a Super Bowl to this area. So it's always nice to see a local team doing well.
Now you're going to be announcing the game on the Big 101.3 with Ed Pereira, correct?
That is a very true story, Paul Santos.
Well,
yes,
when I get in the car, I mean, it's Thursday afternoon. I'll probably be in the car doing some errands coming out of work. I'm going to put on Ed Pereira and Chris Santos and listen to the Super Bowl. I had the good fortune of announcing that game on DCTV where Grant Darmafal kicked a 42-yard field goal to beat Dartmouth. Mm-hmm. And I got to tell you, man, that's the first field goal I think he ever kicked, and it's going to be talked about for years to come. But I'll tell you, get into Gillette Stadium, you get into the Super Bowl, and you got a close game. Hey, that kid is a weapon that you never know when they could call upon him again.
No, and I'm sure Coach Almeida has exactly everybody who he wants. I'm hoping he's got everybody healthy and they're ready to go. So I know they had a couple of guys sit out in that second half, I guess, against Dartmouth. But, hey, this is the time to lay it all on the line. This is the game you want to be at. This is the game you look forward to when you go to high school. If they're in it, wish them nothing but the best for Fairhaven High School.
And it goes without saying, the all-time touchdown leader, Justin Marks, 34 touchdowns, I think, now on the season, and the all-time touchdown maker. He actually took the record from Nate Pickup, who was a great running back in 1991. But before we go, Stephen Escobar says, you guys remember Scott Secules?
Scott Secules.
I do not. That
one's not ringing a bell with me, Stephen. I'm not sure on that.
Not exactly a household name there, I don't think.
No, not sure on that one.
All right, we'll have to do a little.
We'll save that one for hopefully next week. Stephen will come back and
we got a little research. We got a little research to do. All right, for Chris Santos, I'm Paul Santos of Santos on Sports. A lot of fun today. Thank you very much for participating, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Take care.